Welcome, Canada, to everyone's favorite show, Uninterrupted, where I ramble on and on and on, and then I ramble on some more. If you're a fan, welcome. If you're a lawyer suing me, double welcome. So, tonight's show, we're going to deal with genocide. What is a genocide? Is rounding people up into camps and exterminating them, sterilizing them women, is that genocide? I don't know. Well, I do know, but someone doesn't. Definitive proof that all hope you should have about the Biden administration, that'd be 1% better than Barack Obama's, should be thrown out the window now. Dr. Teresa Tam's new rocket modeling is a abject lie. Andrew Cuomo, the darling of the mainstream media for the last year, turns out sexual predator. Who would have thought? Everyone. And what do the Democrats really care about? Fascinating little poll here on the top concerns of the Democratic Party that should really kind of spark your interest. Okay, so the number one story in Canada is Justin Trudeau forced his entire cabinet to abstain from a vote on recognizing the Ugayer genocide as a genocide. The best part, or the worst part, or the saddest part, is that Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mark Gano, who used to be an astronaut, right? So this was someone we were proud of as a country, who went to space. A man of reason, science, international cooperation. He was sent as Justin Trudeau's lapdog errand boy to obfuscate on behalf of the entire cabinet. Why? Why would Justin Trudeau do this? It's really beyond me. If you just want to if you want to do China's bidding, then you stop the whole Liberal Party. You don't even let the vote happen. Actually, if you don't let the vote happen, if the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Bloc could screw you over. So I understand that. If the Liberals had a majority, there's no way we'd recognize this genocide, right? But because they have a minority, I guess we have to recognize it. But I just don't understand the politics involved here or the social signaling. I just don't understand it. Now, best case scenario from Justin Trudeau's perspective is he knows the media will run cover for him. So he's the golden boy. Thou shalt not bash thine liberals is, 9 of the 10 commandments. I think it's somewhere in the Bible. I think it's the Bible according to Justin Trudeau. So he knows that the media will not sort of rake him over the coals on this, and the Globe and Mail will write one article, and then Andrew Coyne 2.5 weeks from now will write a very, very long article about why genocide is bad, and he'll use every word in his vocabulary, and he'll pull out the thesaurus to make sure that no one can actually read the thing, right? And we'll have a very intellectual conversation about, is genocide bad? Is Justin Trudeau good? Okay. So he must know the media's running cover for him. So is this to sort of signal to China that hey China, I still got your back? Why are we still doing that? Why are we doing that? Why are we still signaling to China that we're bros? They've kidnapped 2 Canadians. We've done nothing, right? Didn't Justin Trudeau have a $45 million vaccine deal with China? They just reneged on it. They took the money and are not providing anything because, Meng Wanzhou, give us everything we want. They're totalitarian, authoritarian. And we're going to get into this later with the Iran stuff, but it's the exact same thing. Totalitarian regimes, evil regimes, people have a very hard time understanding this if you grew up in Canada. They will push and push and push. It is an all or nothing thing, right? So they will push to see how much they can get away with. There is no appeasing evil regimes. You cannot appease them. That is not how it works. They're not reasonable. I say this often again. If Canada and the Netherlands have a problem, we can go to the Netherlands and talk about it. We can talk to France, right? We can talk to the United States. We can talk to Mexico. We cannot talk to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and we cannot talk to the Chinese Communist Party. This is how they work. They see how far they can push and how much they can get away with. Can we kidnap 2 Canadians? Yes. Okay, let's see what else we can get away with. Can we take their money on a vaccine deal and just not give it back to them until we get what we want? Yes, we can do that. Can we keep pushing and pushing and pushing? What they're going to keep doing is they're going to keep pushing Canada until Justin Trudeau stands up to them, which looks like it's planned for, carry the 3, never. He's never going to do that. So you have him forcing his cabinet to abstain. And what it does is it signals to the Canadian people that we're in a moral abomination. We are just the worst. I will cry about Islamophobia all day, but when it comes to Muslims being put in concentration camps, well, forcibly sterilizing women and putting them in concentration camps, well, we can't really say. Now, is there something else to be said? But it's not just the liberals. Is this the general view of the left, let's say? Now, I'm going to read a Twitter thread from the Youth for the NDP. This seems like an organization relying on young Canadians to vote progressively, not strategically, not affiliated with the official NDP. Okay? So, fair enough, the NDP. And they have like 209 Twitter followers, okay? But this tweet got 367 likes, okay? 367 likes from an account of 200 likes. So, I'm not saying this is the mainstream left, but I think this is a fascinating articulation of part of where the left is and the cultural relativism here. I'm going to read the whole thing. Starts with, although the NDP voted in favor of calling out China for committing genocide against Uyghur Muslims, we are concerned about the sources of these claims and the lack of evidence presented. We hope more research can be done before any action is taken. Yes, we hope we can think about it more before we stop this genocide. Before we stop the genocide. Remember last week when I showed you the footage of the Chinese Uyghurs actually being herded into concentration camps through trains? Yes, okay. Okay, the thread goes on. Thank you to Anne Domise for sharing this information with us. Here is a source that shares more information, but always we encourage everyone to do their own research. So they're basically saying, they're going to make the argument that some of the people researching this genocide aren't hardcore leftists, therefore we can't trust them. Here's an article that talks about the bias held by the star witness against China and why you should be skeptical of what you hear from him via Dimitri Lascaris. Now, Dimitri Lascaris, I know this character, is an avowed anti-Semite, terrorist supporter, lawyer, but this guy, I don't know if he's on the payroll of the Islamic Republic of Iran, but I would not be surprised if he was. He has been present at every anti-Semitic pro-terrorist rally in the last 10 years, let's say. He has a history of attacking Jewish organizations. He has shown up at the Al-Quds Day March, which is actually run by the Islamic Republic of Iran. There has never been an anti-Semitic terrorist this guy has not loved. So I'll go into the Dimitri Lascaris article after we go through the other one. We are not denying any presence of genocide or persecution against Uyghurs. However, we don't believe the evidence is sufficient to call another country out, especially when it is well documented that Canada is actively committing a genocide of our own. Okay, this goes back to what I was saying last week with the Indigenous thing. You can get mad at us, but we're just happening to repeat what the U.S. State Department thing said. Okay, so let's just break down this last part before we go back to Dimitri Lascaris' thing. This is cultural relativism, and this is why it is so evil. This is one of the most evil thoughts to sort of come out of modern academia. It is the fact that because we did something bad historically, because Johnny MacDonald said stuff racist 150 years ago, who are we to tell the Chinese that they can't commit a genocide, right? It's because something wrong happened in our country at one point, it now means that all evil is equal. All evil is equal. Right? The Holocaust is evil, but Canada, a few RCMP officers murdered Indigenous women. So what's the difference? Right? The better comparison is you sometimes see this happening, and I remember being at the War Museum, leading a school group on a general tour of Ottawa, and we had the War Museum tour guide. By the way, if you ever have me at the National War Museum, you don't need a tour guide. I can do it much better. But she was going on, and I kind of liked her until she got to the part where she was talking about Canada's crimes during the Second World War, which is the internment of the Japanese, which was a shame, and we've apologized, and was bad. However, she led with a thing, and this is sort of the modern thing, is like, are we really so different? Are we really the good guys? Yes, we were the good guys in World War II. The Nazis rounded up Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, blacks, Polish people, put them into work camps, then shipped them from the work camps they had nothing to actual death camps. Put them in camps where they had no nutrition, shoved them into gas chambers, threw them to incinerate their bodies, sometimes still alive, en masse. Murdered 11 million people systematically with actual malicious intent for mass murder for the purpose of creating a white person caliphate, a white fate, Lebensbrau, the perfect union. Whereas Canada's crime is, after we were attacked by Japan, Out of fear of Japanese Canadians being spies for Japan, we interned the Japanese in poor conditions, nowhere near Auschwitz conditions, but very poor conditions, no heating, no electricity, some of them died to the cold. We interned them as a reactionary method. Now, is this a crime? Yes. Should we apologize? Yes. Have we apologized? Yes. Is it a crime on par with the Holocaust? Not even close. But this is moral relativism, right? And this is a great trick being pushed by, academics with ties to Qatar, Iran, China to help undermine the West. Because yes, Qatar has slaves right now, but America had slaves 200 years ago. So what's the difference really when you think about it, By the way, I should have done a story on Qatar now trying to fund a right-wing Al Jazeera, which is like the perfect thing for Aaron O'Toole. That's like the perfect place for Aaron O'Toole to be. A fake right-wing media sponsored by the Muslim Brotherhood. Like that is like where Aaron O'Toole should live. I mean, I don't know why they just haven't started setting up that media organization inside Aaron O'Toole's office. But here you have, there's well-documented evidence that Canada's committing a genocide. Population numbers increasing, but well documented. Now, is the treatment of our Indigenous historically, is it an A+? No. Okay, is it close? Not even. Is it tantamount to genocide? No, it's not. Okay, we're not currently committing a genocide. But then, this goes to what I said before. Justin Trudeau got up in front of the world, publicly copped to committing a genocide based on flimsy evidence. Now, the evidence was raw, and everyone swallowed it wholeheartedly, but if you looked at it, right, it was, I said, around 75% of the missing and murdered Indigenous women were murdered by Indigenous men, which makes tons of sense, not because that's what Indigenous men do, but that's what men do. Women are most likely to experience violence at the hands of someone they know personally. The most likely person to murder a woman is someone in her family, right, then her boyfriend. Then the further out, strangers are rare. It happens. The RCMP can murder someone, it's happened, but this is not the majority, right? This is like calling America a genocide for the violence in the ghettos, right? A lot of it, saying, oh, white America's committing a genocide against black America. Well, most young black men are killed by other young black men, so this is not a genocide. Now, is there problems here? Is there structural racism you want to talk about? Like, we can have these conversations, but the problem is when you just go straight to genocide. So now, because we've sort of called ourselves genocidal in this sort of masochistic leftist way of like, oh, just self-whipping ourselves, just, oh, we are so evil, we're so terrible, we did this and we did this. It is delaying, I was going to say, developmentally delaying, the R wording, our ability to be moral and fight evil. This is the evils of cultural relativism, is it sucks away the power for well-meaning, well-intended people to actually go out there and fight evil. So you have a bunch of do-gooder leftist youth who want to sort of make the world a better place, but because of these theories of cultural relativism, they actually cannot stand up to a genocide. And they're quoting an anti-Semitic terrorist supporter. Wanted fact checkers, Aden Zensk, wanted for, serial data abuse, this Dimitri Lascaris thing. I mean, you look at this article and it's basically, he's a Jew. He's a Jew and he doesn't hate Israel. Therefore we can't trust him. It's ridiculous. So I'm not even going to give him the time of day here. But okay, this is the moral and ideological corruption of the left. So you have Justin Trudeau forcing an astronaut to go into Parliament and be the one to abstain from voting on the genocide. Why would he abstain? Why would he abstain? Like, what's the political savvy here? I just don't get it. Is it so he could then, like, the only reason the reason he would abstain is so on back channels he can go and grovel to the Chinese and say, no, master, please, master, I didn't mean to do it, master, I had to, master, because I have a minority, master. Master, can you please help me get a majority? And then we'll never say anything bad about China again. Thank you, master. It's the only reason he would have the cabinet abstain, because it didn't affect the vote. It was just sort of a small little overture to the Chinese Communist Party, which again cannot be appeased. The more you try and appease it, the more they realize how weak you are, and the more they try and attack you. So, can we just never take Justin Trudeau as a moral authority figure seriously ever again? Can we just do that? If there's any good to come out of this genocide, can we just never listen to Justin Trudeau again? That'd be nice. Okay. Transitioning smoothly here. I have been sort of optimistic that Joe Biden would not be as 100% terrible on foreign policy as Barack Obama was. I was 99% sure. I was holding out 1%. They immediately said they weren't going to re-enter the JCPOA or the Iran deal. And I was like, okay, good. Maybe Joe Biden isn't as radical as Barack Obama. You know, he's an old school Democrat. You know, he's the moderate one. He wouldn't be as radical as Obama. But he started to bring in more anti-Semites and more basically Iranian propagandists have gone into the State Department. So it's been losing, and now it's officially done. The writing is on the wall. Joe Biden hates America and doesn't care about the lives of American citizens. And, you know, I hate being hyperbolic, but sorry, this is factually true. This is factually true if you look at what's happening on a foreign policy stage. And before we get into the current attacks on American civilians by Iran in the last week, there have been 3 attacks, we have to explain what the Iran deal is. Now, if you're a longtime viewer of the show, you've heard my Iran deal rant before, but if you're new here, it is important that you know what the hell the JCPOA is, because it is the craziest thing that has ever been signed into law. Now, leading up to the JCPOA, the Iran deal, there were heavy sanctions being put on Iran, not by Barack Obama, but Obama was president. And then Obama wanted a big foreign policy win. Now, Iran was about to come to his knees. I have friends who were living in Iran at the time. The real Iranians, like sent to jail for wanting freedom Iranians. And they were saying the regime was testing out new propaganda lies, because they were saying how they'd never give in to the great Satan. America is the great Satan, still the great Satan, even under Obama, even under Biden, still the great Satan. This wasn't a Trump thing. They had started to parrot the phrase heroic flexibility. They started to test heroic flexibility, signaling that they were going to give in to American demands and they were going to stop funding terrorism. This is what they do. And according to their own internal documents, what the Quds Force does is it funds terrorism. That is the reason it was designed. That's Qasem Soleimani's goal, is to be a master terrorist. They were going to give in. Heroic flexibility. But then Barack Obama wanted the Iran deal. He wanted a foreign policy win. He wanted to look like such a great, world leader. So they signed the Iran deal. Now, what is in the Iran deal? Remember, Iran was about to agree to not fund terrorism. In exchange, what the Americans do is they give Iran and free up over $150 billion of cash, which immediately went to terrorist organizations. What does America get in return? According to Barack Obama and Joe Biden and MSNBC and every other fool on the planet, the Iran deal was a means to stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. How does it do that? It helps Iran build nuclear weapons. According to JCPOA, 8 years after it's signed, it lets Iran build intercontinental ballistic missile technology. At 10 years, they would have the ability to enrich uranium to weapons grade. That means weapons grade uranium with the ability to slant them on a missile and send them anywhere in the world. That's insane. Now, don't worry, we're going to stop the Iranians from nuking the world because the Iran deal has a 20-year provision. They're not allowed to nuke the world for 20 years. That's right, that's the actual Iran deal. 8 years they're allowed to build intercontinental ballistic missiles, 10 years they're allowed to build enriched uranium, and in 20 years they're allowed to blow up Israel. In celebration of the Iran deal, an electronic billboard was put up in Tehran, capital of Iran, with a countdown that was 20 years to the exact expiration date of the Iran deal, titled The Destruction of Israel, the countdown with a giant nuclear mushroom cloud. What do you think their intentions were with the nuclear weapons America was about to give them? So Barack Obama was going to give them intercontinental ballistic missile technology, nuclear weapons, and then this was under the guise of stopping them from getting ICBMs and nukes. Are you crazy? Now, the funniest part of this entire thing is, don't worry, the Iranians were totally they never broke the deal, they had been honorable, they had never overly enriched uranium, because the weapons monitors found nothing. Now, what was the International Weapon Monitoring's clause being put in under the JCPOA that, John Kerry will laud and CNN will laud and MSNBC will sneer at you for not realizing the weapons monitors have found no violations by Iran. The only people to violate the deal was Donald Trump. The weapons monitoring standards under the JCPOA are such. Now, usually when you inspect a country for weapons, you send surprise inspections and the inspectors inspect. Not in the JCPOA. No surprise inspections for the Iranians. The Iranians get to choose the date at which the weapons inspectors come. That's right, they get to choose what day they come. And The Iranians get a veto on where the weapons inspectors look. That's right. The Iranians get to veto where the weapons inspectors look and when they look there. And surprise, they haven't found anything. They haven't found anything up. Oh, wow. This is ridiculous. My analogy is, you and I are about to play a game of hide and seek to the death. We're about to play a game called hide and seek to the death. Now, if you want to play, you have to pay me $158 billion. If you win, I won't destroy the world. You don't get a refund, okay? But if I win, I get to destroy the world and kill you, okay? So, you win, I don't kill you. I win, I kill you, okay? And you have to pay me $158 to play. Now, here's the rule. I hide in your house for an entire day, and if you find me, you win. However, before you enter a room, you must send me a text message and ask if it's okay to go into that room. If I say no, you're not allowed to search that room. Hide and go seek to the death. You pay me $158 billion to play. If I win, I kill you. If you win, no one, well, I say sorry, and then I probably try and kill you anyway, but I say I won't. That's Obama's Iran deal. And the media was like, oh my God, wow. Wow. What a great world leader. What a man of peace. Now, I really could not understand why Obama did this. The most reasonable explanation is not that he wants America dead, it's that he was a narcissist. So this is where, Trump's narcissism was comical. Trump's narcissism is, I have the biggest crowd ever, everyone loves me, all the black people love me, all the Muslims love me, all the Jews love me, all the Hindus love me, all the Christians love me, everyone loves me, I'm literally the greatest. And we go, okay, but this is just silly, right? We have a good laugh, we make some Trump jokes. Obama's narcissism was he wanted to create this image of himself as this great orator, this great peacemaker, this great diplomat, that he was willing to sacrifice the lives of Americans, Yemenis, Lebanese, Syrians, the amount of dead bodies that piled up because of the Iran deal to satiate this man's ego is insane. That's a dangerous type of narcissism. Now, is this Joe Biden just trying to protect Obama's legacy? Is this the utter in-group thing? So this is why you have to look at the Democrats hate America, and I like the blob that is the Democratic Party, and I give Joe Biden this title because he's in charge of this. He could have said no. Joe Biden can read. Unless you want to say Joe Biden's totally senile and has been for 10 years, he just doesn't know what planet he's on. He's just, but he's not that far gone. Joe Biden can read the JCPOA. Joe Biden can realize that giving the Iranians nuclear weapons is not how you stop Iran from getting nuclear weapons. You understand that. Your cat understands that. But how does this work? So I put up an article yesterday, I wrote an article, in honor of Joe Biden, Iran has started killing Americans. So in the last couple of weeks, there have been 3 attacks on American bases, and Americans have been killed in such attacks. Now, we all know if Donald Trump was president right now, there would be screams about how Donald Trump's reckless foreign policy is endangering the lives of Americans. By the way, when we mean reckless foreign policy, I mean the policy of punishing people for killing Americans. It is reckless to deter violence against your country. This is reckless and a break from normal. And there's one point I quote in the article, because I quote an MSNBC article. There's an MSNBC article on these deadly attacks that literally starts off with this. Washington. Iranian-backed Iraqi militias were most likely behind a deadly rocket barrage on a U.S.-led coalition base in northern Iraq earlier this week. But it's not clear whether Iran had any role in directing the attack, experts and a U.S. official say on Friday. What? And I said in the article, this is the equivalent of me writing an article in September of 1939 titled, Germany invades Poland, but it's not clear if Nazi high command was involved. Expert says. Who are these experts? Who are these officials? See, this is the sort of rot within the intelligentsia that has come to fruition here. And I know these people. And I love some of these people. They're family members. But the intellectual rot and the moral corrosion within the mainstream media and academia and the intelligentsia, who get their news from places like MSNBC, who think it's not real news until it gets in the New York Times, who still live under this illusion that there is this sort of journalistic ethos that flows throughout these organizations, and people there are actually seeking truth, not the narrative. This is how they're allowed to do it. Because the fancy media people, the experts on Iran, I don't know if the expert is the son of the Ayatollah or not, but the experts say that an Iranian attack on an American base, we're not even sure if Iran's involved in this. Yes, they were flying the Iranian flag and they had tattooed on their forehead, we're doing this on the orders of the Ayatollah Khomeini, who is the supreme leader of Iran. By the way, we were talking about Iran, starts with an I, it's next to Iraq, specifically Iran, the Islamic Republic, the one that started in 1978. This is our prime motivation. There's no other motivation other than Iran told us to do so. That was tattooed on everyone's forehead, but we still don't know why this happened. And do you notice a shift in tone? A year ago, this 3 attacks on American base would have been indicative of Trump's crazy, wild foreign policy. Oh no! But now Americans are actually dying. And this goes back to what I've been saying about totalitarian regimes. They test you to see what they can get away with. Whenever there's a geopolitical shift, Iran will see what they can get away with. Under Trump, every time they tried something, they were rebuffed. Every time they tried to fight America or its allies or do something to undermine America, it resulted in consequences for Iran. Sanctions were increased, right? Qasem Soleimani was taken out. Militias were undermined. Actual consequences. Iran's strategic capabilities were undermined whenever they attacked America. They learned to stop attacking America. They rarely tested Donald Trump. They knew that if you killed Americans under Donald Trump, he would kill you. It's a good foreign policy. But now what they're learning is they've managed to attack Joe Biden 3 times in the last week, and nothing has happened. In fact, they're getting more and more victories. Do you think this is going to result in peace with these people? Do you honestly think that the Islamic Republic of Iran, which just hung a woman who had died of a heart attack a day earlier. She died in prison of a heart attack, and then they decided to hang her just because. Do you really think these people can be reasoned with? Do you really think that if you just let them kill your civilians and citizens with impunity that they will stop? Do you really think the Ayatollah Khomeini, whose goal is it to establish a global caliphate based on his rule, isn't going to try and do that? So there's no excuse for Joe Biden here. Like, Joe Biden is the so-called moderate, and then now there's no excuse for the Democratic Party when they say they care about American lives. No excuse, because there's a systemic push within the Democratic Party to undermine America's strategic capability to defend Americans. And all for the purpose of pushing a deal that would empower their greatest enemy to gain intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons. It's insane. And now, if you want to sort of downplay and stick your head in the sand, let's say you're my aunts and uncles, and you need to stick your head in the sand right now, because you've heard something that just doesn't conform with your narrative, and you're very smart, and you're very educated, and you just need that sand right now. You need head in sand. Kaboom. The world's not going to nuclear war. Nuclear war won't happen because if they launch nukes, they knew America would retaliate. They just want nukes for protection. We have nukes, they have nukes, we all want nukes for protection. Okay, fine. Take the nukes out of it. You're still giving them ICBMs. You're still giving them ballistic missile tech. The ballistic missile tech is enough to set off World War III. Because Iran, what they have a history of doing is the Islamic Republic funds and militias all across the world. If they get ballistic missile tech, that's going to Syria. That's going to Lebanon. That's going to the Houthis in Yemen. And then do you really think Saudi Arabia is going to allow ballistic missile tech, high-grade ballistic missile tech, to just be sitting on their border? This week, the Houthis just came out and said, if America stops protecting Saudi Arabia, we'll be able to take over Riyadh in 3 weeks. They just promised to invade Saudi Arabia. Do you really think the Saudis are just going to let Yemen hold ballistic missile tech without trying to blow it up? Now, I've been talking about before about how the Saudis do not conduct the most ethical warfare. But if you give their enemies, people who are actually trying to destroy them, ballistic missile tech, that's going to start off a war. Do you think the Israelis are just going to let Hezbollah sit within a ballistic missile tech on the northern border to blow up Tel Aviv? No. This will lead to war. You don't need the nukes to start World War III. The World War III is world-ending. But the ballistic missile tech that they want to give the Iranians for no reason, why is it in there? Who wrote the Iran deal? Iran wrote the Iran deal. They hate you. They hate you. They hate you. They think you're stupid. And the people I think are the stupidest people according to the Democrats are the intelligentsia, because they know how to manipulate you. It's my aunts and uncles. It's my highly educated aunts and uncles who they know at the slightest fear of being called out as a heretic, you will immediately throw all your principles away. You'll throw everything under the bus. You'll stick your head in the sand, and you will pretend that the expert on MSNBC who says Iran attacked America, but we're not sure if Iran's behind it. Oh yes, the expert says it. I read the New York Times. I read the New Yorker. I get my news. I'm very sophisticated. The more of this you read, the dumber you get, and they know that. It's ridiculous. Well, before my head explodes, let's move on to story number 3. Dr. Teresa Tam. So, everyone's favorite doctor, Dr. Teresa Tam, World Health Organization enthusiast, basically Canada's doctator. So let's bring up the graph she showed us earlier this week. So this is the rocket modeling graph that Dr. Teresa Tam bring up. So if you bring up the graph, it's picture number 1, and as you see now, it shows the modeling for March. Do we have the graph, team? Yeah. There we go. Graph number 1. Okay, so here you see, this is fine. This is where we are now, and that big yellow line, this is what's projected for March. Now, there is absolutely no evidence of this happening. With further spread of the variants, this is most likely what's going to happen. We're going to reach more COVID cases than we have ever. It's going to more than triple our worst period. Okay, this is Dr. Teresa Tam's graph. She provided no evidence for this graph. Now, do we have the actual graph of what actually happened? Okay, you see the last black line there on the far right? That is when the exponential graph came up. This is Toronto right now. We are staying steady, and cases are actually going down of the coronavirus. Okay, thank you for that. So we had the rocket modeling, which was ka-ching, and we have the actual modeling, which is stop lying. Stop lying to us. This is what I've been saying from the beginning. Had you just told the truth from the beginning, we'd be in a much better scenario. There'd be less vaccine hesitancy. There'd be less conspiracy theories. But honestly, when you throw out the rocket modeling graph, you put no data to back it up, you try and scaremonger with your fancy science, you call yourself the science, what is the difference between Teresa Tam and one random guy on Twitter? Nothing. Other than the authority granted to them by the federal government. Other than that, there is no difference. There is no difference on who is more trustworthy, Dr. Teresa Tam or random anime profile on Twitter. No difference. Except random anime profile on Twitter has probably lied less about the pandemic. And I've said before, I'm not a pandemic denier. I'm not saying COVID-19 isn't real. I tried to be realistic of what the actual dangers are. But Dr. Teresa Tam is lying to you. Justin Trudeau is lying to you. John Tory is lying to you. Doug Ford is lying to you. They're lying to you for the express purpose of curtailing your civil rights. Why would you listen to these people? There is nothing the federal government or the scientific experts can now say on COVID-19 that would make me believe them. There is nothing they can say. I do not believe them. I do not believe a single word they say. It is lies. They abject lie for the purpose of scaring you. And I was saying at the beginning, this is a bad tactic at the beginning. If this is a 2-week crisis, you can maybe justify lying, saying if we need everyone to be inside just for 2 weeks, and if we could really beat this out in 2 weeks, if we just need to scare people into staying inside because we can actually solve this in 2 weeks, maybe. But it's a pandemic. You cannot solve a disease in 2 weeks. Everyone knew this was going to last longer than 2 weeks. Everyone knew that. Yet, they decided to start off by lying. Start off with fear-mongering. And they could have been honest at the beginning, saying, listen, we're going to try and be guided by science and data, but we are in fog of war right now. The current data we're giving you might not be perfect, and it is likely that in 3 months we're going to find out that what we did wasn't actually right. And had they said that at the beginning, and then had they actually admitted 3 months later that, yeah, okay, we're going to reevaluate because we have more evidence, this was wrong, this was wrong, this was wrong, this is right, this is right, this was wrong, here's where we're wrong, here's where we're right, had they shown some humility. But they've continued to change their story while maintaining consistently that they've never changed it. That everything they've said has always been true, even when they're contradicting themselves. It's doublethink. This is Orwellian. They're asking you to partake in Orwellian doublethink. And this is why people are opting out. This is why people are skeptical of vaccines. And to add to the skepticism, the highest rates of skepticism come in the black and Latin XXX community. Lots of X's. X going to give it to you. They're the most skeptical. Now, you could talk about it forever, but then the further gaslighting is everyone who's skeptical of vaccine is a white supremacist. Unless the black people are skeptical of the vaccine, then we must talk about how it's racism that's forcing them to be skeptical. Right? You're gaslighting half the population here. It's ridiculous. So here you have Dr. Teresa Tam, 1 year later, still thinks lying to everyone is the best public policy. And when you lie, you erode trust in the public institutions. And one of the big dangers is, of the Trudeau administration, and I was saying this in 2019, go back to the original videos I was making about the Danforth shooting and the lying. The constant lying from our public officials, the obfuscation, the lies about this and this and this, is eroding trust in the institutions. And one day we will need trust in the institutions because there will be some point where they will need to use it for the greater good. That point is an emergency pandemic. The problem is when 2020 hit, Justin Trudeau had eroded so much trust in our institutions because of their reflexive lying for political purposes that no one took them seriously. There was no trust left in the institutions because they had managed to lie to us on several issues beforehand. So here you have Dr. Teresa Tam, who's been granted unlimited power, the dictator of Canada. And here she is just lying, saying that COVID cases in March are going to be more than triple our worst over the last year. More than triple. Where's the evidence? Can't provide it. Listen to the science. I should really have happier stories. Remember when the terrorists blew themselves up last week? Good times. Okay. Moving on to our next story. Andrew Cuomo, the great anti-Trump hero, heroic hero, Emmy award-winning hero for his honesty on coronavirus. Even though his state had the highest rate of deaths. Hero. Even though he intimidated his own staffers who were trying to expose the fact that he was sending COVID-infected patients into the nursing homes, resulting in the massive infections, the outbreaks, and the maximum of death possible. Hero. Andrew Cuomo. Villain Ron DeSantis. Villainous Ron DeSantis. Oh, I'm so mad at Ron DeSantis. I'm so mad. I hate him. I hate him so much. He's basically a murderer. He's murdering everyone. Cuomo. Well, it turns out Cuomo is a serial sexual harasser. And who would have thought? Everyone. So here's a story by Lindsay Boland, who was a former aide to Andrew Cuomo. It came out today. I'll read bits of this article. Let's just see how it starts. It starts with, quote, "Let's play strip poker. I should have been shocked by the governor's crude comments, but I wasn't. We were flying from an October 2017 event in Western New York on his taxpayer-funded jet. He was seated facing me, so close our knees almost touched. His press aide to my right and state trooper behind us." Now, she goes over, a pretty lengthy process of Cuomo sexually harassing her, Cuomo trying to get her in rooms alone, Cuomo intimidating her, Cuomo kissing her on the lips, Cuomo knowing he's married and she's married but still trying to push it anyway, and intimidation from a staffer. Now, the difference between her and the Kavanaugh stuff is she does this crazy thing. She does this wild thing. I've never seen this before. She provides evidence. She provides email. She provides text message exchange, screenshots in her article. There's actually evidence in this article to validate her claims. Who would have thought? Now, why is the left not taking this claim of abuse of power and sexual harassment, Me Too, with actual evidence nearly as seriously as the Kavanaugh stuff? Is it because they have no principles, most likely? Is it because the media controls the narrative? Yes. So you can look this up. I mean, I highly suggest you read this whole article. I'm not going to read all of it to you because, it's long. It's on medium.com. Medium.com, Lindsay Boylan, Boylan. So Boylan, look it up. I suggest you read it. The thing is, how many people knew? When they are giving him an Emmy, how many people knew? And this is why we can't have nice things. Because, the Trump derangement syndrome is worse than the cultural relativism we talked about earlier. Cultural relativism blinds you. This is legitimate embrace of evil. Not the inability to fight evil, but the embrace of evil because you misdefine what evil is. And the next story is going to talk about this, but anyone who just said bad things about Trump automatically became a hero. So here you had Andrew Cuomo, who was able to cover up for his years of sexually abusing staffers, for, probably, for I don't know how many women in his office. So I'm sure he sexually harassed all the attractive women in his office. I'm sure people knew about it, right? It's pretty clear that people in his inner circle knew about it. How far-fetched is it to assume that some members of the press knew about this? But because he was in opposition to Trump, he immediately became the good guy. And this became the problem with the left, is anything Trump said was bad by default. Trump became evil, and due to lazy thought, anything Trump said, therefore, must be wrong. So when Trump tried to back the protesters in Iran, the Democrats said, no, we side with the authoritarian republic murdering protesters. We side with the murder of protesters. Well, we side with the rioters in America, but murdering protesters is okay in Iran. Because you're allowed to protest for, racial justice and against systemic racism in the police department without sufficient evidence, but you're not allowed to protest for basic freedoms in the Islamic Republic of Iran. That is unacceptable. Shoot them in the head. Remember, when faced with claims that the IRGC was shooting protesters in the head, they defended themselves saying, we are not just shooting them in the head, we are also shooting them in the legs, actual quote from the Iranian IRGC on why they were killing so many protesters. Backed up by Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, because Trump said that murdering people is bad, therefore murdering people must be good. If there ever has been a story, all the stories I've shown this week, that the left is morally bankrupt, is this not it? Well, he was going around talking about women's rights while he was pontificating on the evils of Trump. While everyone was so busy trying to slam Trump, they propped this man up. While people were dying in New York en masse, they blamed Trump. And how many women get to be abused by Democrats? This is sort of like the Jessica Yaniv thing on the trans stuff. This is actually it's the exact same thing. Not all trans people are sexual abusers. Trans people do not become trans for the express purpose of sexually abusing women. It's not what happens. However, if you create a protected legal class saying trans people have the most amount of rights, you create new rights for trans people, you say it is transphobic to deny, trans people the ability to get their genitals waxed at a female-only trans salon, even though they still have a penis, you get Jessica Yaniv, or Jonathan Yaniv, right? You get sociopaths. When you create a protected legal class that has legal immunity, you get sociopaths gravitating towards that profession or that community or that identity because they know they can assume that identity and then use it for the sociopathic means, which is why sociopaths are claiming to be trans in prison so they can get transferred to women's prison and then abuse women because they're big, bad men and they're stronger than the women and they can abuse the women. Sociopaths will take advantage of protected classes. If you make the Democrat a protected class, and especially a Democrat who attacks Trump a protected class, you will get sociopathic people wanting to become Democratic leaders because they know they can get away with sociopathic behavior. And you are enabling this. As if you were on the left and you still consume mainstream media primarily, and you were like, if you were Cuomo sexual, actual thing, if you cheered when Andrew Cuomo got an Emmy because he was being so honest and transparent, you are enabling sociopathic, predatory behavior. You don't get to complain about Me Too if you cheered Andrew Cuomo. You don't, because you're enabling it. You are the problem. Okay. Final story of the day. I think this graph is absolutely fascinating. So here's a study done recently, polling, not a study, it's polling done. It's called Trump Supporters, the question is asked, how concerned are you, if all, that the following program in the country? So this is Democrats being asked, keep the graph up for now, it's good, no one needs to see my face. So the number one concern, and in the red, if you could see, is extremely / very concerned. Donald Trump supporters is the top concern among Democrats. 57% of Democrats are extremely concerned, 57% are extremely, 82% are extremely concerned about, 82% are very to extremely concerned. 82% are very to extremely concerned about Trump supporters. 10% are just somewhat concerned. And then 8% are reasonable. White nationalism, 79%, right? So white nationalism and systemic racism are less of a concern than Donald Trump supporters, who apparently are the white nationalist, systemic racist, domestic terrorists. So gun violence, whatever, Americans lacking health coverage, police brutality, those are all real things, discrimination, sexism, whatever, so voter suppression, student debt. Okay. Now, do you see the last thing on the list? At the very bottom is capitalism. Now, it's nice it's less, but 39% of Democrats are extremely or very concerned about capitalism. 26% are somewhat concerned over capitalism. Around 2/3 of registered Democrats are now concerned about capitalism. Remember when Barack Obama came in and it was racist and conspiratorial to assume that Democrats were anti-capitalist? That Democrats are just trying to push socialism? Now around two-thirds of Democrats are concerned about capitalism. And the majority of them are extremely or very concerned. Do you not see the poison the media is doing to our society? Now we can show my face because the graph's been explained. But do you not see just how bad this is? That 82% of Democrats are very concerned about Trump supporters. Why? Because they've been poisoned by the media to think, they're going to milk this Capitol Hill riot for whatever it's worth. Whatever the Capitol Hill riot's worth, they're just going to milk it. And this is the fear being pumped in. Can we take the graph away now? This is, could you imagine the other way around? If it came out, can you imagine the moral panic and how Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would feel unsafe? How unsafe Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would feel if they polled Republicans. And 82% of Republicans were concerned about Democrats, extremely concerned with AOC supporters, or extremely concerned with Biden supporters. This is the societal breakdown. If you were extremely to very concerned about Trump supporters, which is 82% of Democrats, you've been poisoned by the media. You live in a bubble. You do not possess critical thinking skills. Straight up. And that's now 82% of Democrats. 82% of Democrats do not possess critical reasoning skills and have been poisoned by the media to hate their political opponents. Now, Gina Carano was just fired. Now, I don't like Holocaust comparisons, but Gina Carano was basically put at a post, and her post, other than, the Holocaust imagery, was now totally right. This totally backs up what Gina Carano said, is we are being taught to hate people for simply having different political opinions. 82% of Democrats are extremely concerned about the other side of the political aisle. That's their number one concern, is Donald Trump supporters. Number one. How messed up is that? To say that do you not think, how do you get this way? This is propaganda. This is propaganda. The fact that 82% of Democrats are extremely concerned about Donald Trump supporters. The biggest concern for the Democrats right now, as you see by the graph. Biggest one. Then we go to the fact that at the bottom, 39% of Democrats are extremely concerned about the concept of capitalism. 26% are somewhat concerned about capitalism. Again, that's 65% of registered Democrats don't believe in capitalism. And this isn't far left, I'm too left, the Democrats really the Republican Party. Right? You have people on Twitter, like, socialists on Twitter, who say the Democrats are secretly the Republicans. They're secretly right-wing because they're capitalists. These people aren't even counted in the graph because they're not registered Democrats. That's how insane it is. So when we say the majority of leftists now are socialists, this is factually true. It's factually true that the majority of the left does not believe in the fundamental ideas of Western civilization. They do not believe in equality, they believe in equity. They do not believe in free markets, they believe in government control of markets. It's not me saying this. I was not one of these people 4 to 8 years ago saying all Democrats are socialists. I believe that they believe in capitalism, they just want to make it, but now they don't. Now they don't. This is how far gone they've gone. This is the corruption of the education system, the corruption of the media, corruption of academia, the political system, everything. You see it right here. And they're literally being brainwashed into hating one another. And it's sad. And on my head, you know what? That's where we're going to leave it today, because if we keep going, my head will explode, and then they'll have to clean it up here. And they said, Daniel, every time your head explodes, we have to clean that up. It takes time. And the next show can't get started because they're cleaning all the blood off the place. It's a big mess. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I've been me. You've been you. If you like the show, get a tattoo of my face onto your face so everyone knows you like it. And I'll see you next week, every Wednesday at 8 p.m.